Al Jazeera podcasts.
Today, why are African countries accepting deportees from the U.S.?
The Trump administration has approached a number of African governments about accepting deportees as part of its campaign to deter immigration through high-profile deportations to so-called third countries.
So what's in it for the African governments? I'm Natasha Del Toro, and this is The Take. Before we start today's episode, if you're watching us on YouTube or Spotify, leave us a comment. I'd like to know what you think about Trump's policy of third country deportations.
My name is Cebelihle Mbuyisa. I'm a journalist that mainly covers human rights concerns in Eswatini. I am at present in Cape Town learning to tell video stories.
Well, Cebelihle, welcome to The Take. We're thrilled to have you with us here today. So the Trump administration has been escalating the use of third country deportations. This is deporting migrants to countries other than their country of origin. The Southern African country of Eswatini, which is where you're from, is one of these. And a group of NGOs is suing the government there because it agreed to take deportees from the U.S.
The opposition in Eswatini has branded the kingdom's agreement to take in criminals from the United States as human trafficking disguised as a deportation deal.
What do we know about the men that are currently being held?
There's 4 of them now. Initially, it was 5. All we know are the details that were important to the Trump administration when they made their announcement in July is that they are dangerous, that they are convicts, that their own countries didn't even want them. And the official statement on X didn't even bother to mention their names. Their names were never really important. What was important, at least to the Trump administration, was the fact that they are dangerous. And it was important then for the supporters of that administration to know that these dangerous people are being thrown out of the U.S. and into these insignificant, or if you like, shithole countries on the African continent.
Oh, so I mean, and when you say these quote shithole countries, this is something that we know the Trump has said to refer to certain African countries.
Yeah, in the last administration, especially.
Their mugshots were released, if I understand correctly, but we don't know their names. What kinds of crimes were these men convicted of?
All kinds of crimes were mentioned. Second-degree murder, burglary. The crimes range around serious felonies. These are men that were outside already and are sent to another country, and nobody addresses the fact that they have not been charged with any crime.
And according to the U.S. government, you know, these are men who already went through the U.S. justice system. They were tried, convicted, and served their time in prison. Though, as you said, it's kind of hard to confirm some of these details because they haven't released their names. Now, lawyers that are challenging this deal say that they want more transparency from Eswatini's government.
We wait to find out how they are being treated. If they wanted to be here, are they here legally? Did they consent to it?
What do we know about these men's deportations and the current conditions that they're in?
We know very little. But on the 16th of July, when the story broke out, the government of Eswatini released a statement saying, acknowledging that there were these prisoners, but they said that they were being held in prison. In Matsapa, there's a high crime facility, or rather a facility that houses dangerous criminals. So they were in solitary confinement.
Masafa is the name of the correctional facility where they are.
Yeah, it's in the heart of Eswatini, in a very developed area of the country, in the country's premier industrial area. and that's where the 4 that remain inside prison remain. What the government said, because it's important that we talk about it also, is that these prisoners are merely in transit. That the government discussed the deal with the US over a period of time and agreed that these prisoners will be sent to Eswatini, but only passing through, and Eswatini will facilitate their deportation to their rightful countries. And yesterday, indeed, one of the prisoners was released to Jamaica.
Okay, so you're telling me that these men are coming from, there was the one guy from Jamaica, there was another one from Yemen, from Cuba, from Vietnam, from Laos, and they are currently being held in this prison. Maybe you could provide a clearer picture for us about this prison and the conditions there.
It's an overcrowded facility, over 190% over capacity. And that's a serious concern. It's already a strained prison system, and they're adding numbers to it.
I want to ask you, while we're still on this topic, I know that some of the people being sent by the U.S. to third countries don't actually have a criminal record, or were mistakenly deported, like the high-profile case of Salvadoran man Kilmer Abrego Garcia, if you're familiar with his case. More recently, the U.S. said that Abrego Garcia was going to be deported to Eswatini, but Eswatini said it wasn't taking him. What do we know about why Eswatini refused to take Abrego Garcia?
Part of the reason why Eswatini might have refused to take Garcia is the blowback, the public pressure, because Eswatini citizens have been especially vocal against this deal on social media, in the streets, calling in on radio. So there has been clear opposition to this. But also the application by the NGOs filed, an agent application filed on the 14th of August. It might have been a deterrent. One of the things they are calling for, they want the court to interdict and restrain the Prime Minister and his government from receiving or importing any other third country deportees into the kingdom pending finalization of the matter by the court.
And I want to get more into the actual legal challenges that they are bringing in a moment. But I still kind of want to understand a little bit more about the deal that the government has made with the U.S. And, I know that Eswatini is just one of the countries in Africa who's received third country deportees from the U.S. There's also Ghana, Rwanda, South Sudan also have taken deportees. Uganda also says that they would receive deportees. So why are they taking them?
I think it's an important thing to acknowledge that these are African countries and poor countries for that matter. Another common thread between these countries is that they have very little in terms of democratic institutions. They hardly have any, and the incumbents are really powerful. They don't get to be challenged as much, either by parliament or the citizenry through other means. So they are able then, or it is relatively easier in these countries for the leaders to get into questionable agreements. Rwanda, for example, already got into talks with Rishi Sunak's government in 2022, if I remember correctly, around third-party immigration, not deportations per se, but third-party immigration, processing refugees, going to the UK, but processing them in Rwanda. So the incumbent there is strong and rarely gets challenged.
What is their incentive, though, for agreeing to such a deal with the United States?
Money. The New York Times revealed recently they got to some evidence that the Eswatini government needed about $10 million for this sort of deal. And for the Eswatini government, about $10 million according to some reports. And that's a significant amount of money for a country like Eswatini. But another thing to consider, we all know that the Trump administration has been using tariffs as a weapon across the world. And some countries have really suffered badly from these tariffs, like Lesotho, for example. The Eswatini government might also have been cornered. This might have been a deal to take, or else.
More with Cebelihle after the break.
Up to 100,000 children go missing in China every year, a number that links back to the 1970s and the one-child policy. This story is about one of those children and the mother who spent decades searching for him. What's happening to China's children? Hear the full story on True Crime Reports.
What about folks living in Eswatini? How do they feel about their country taking these people that the Trump administration described as, quote, depraved monsters and uniquely barbaric, that their countries of origin don't even want them back?
I've been dealing with these recalcitrant countries for years, having to see repeated murderers, sex offenders, violent criminals re-released back into the United States because their home countries would not take them back.
What's been the reaction from the people of Eswatini?
Since July, even in the X post yesterday on social media, total condemnation from across the political divide. People seemed to be appalled by this, and they registered their disapproval on social media especially. Now, within Eswatini, there hasn't been opposition, in the streets, for example, expressed through protests in the streets. That has not happened, except for a few protest actions organized by Eswatini human rights organizations that have their base in South Africa.
And what exactly are they disapproving of? Like when you're saying that there's complete condemnation, maybe you could expand on that a little bit more.
The danger element, when the Trump administration on the 16th of July released the statement, what they emphasized is the fact that these people are dangerous. And to some degree, it caused alarm. Even after learning, even after people learned that these prisoners will be held in jail, there still was dissatisfaction. People just didn't want these dangerous people in their country, in Eswatini.
Now, I want to learn a little bit more about Eswatini, Cebelihle. Now, I know you were born there and raised there, and it's Africa's last absolute monarchy. Now, it's notable that there were protests in South Africa against this deal because they wouldn't have been able to do that in Eswatini, right? I mean, this is a country where the king, Mswati III, appoints the prime minister and the cabinet. Forming political parties is illegal. Now, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit more about Eswatini. What is it like? Tell us more about your country and its human rights record.
Eswatini is a small landlocked country in Southern Africa, only 17,400 square kilometers, and the population is about 1.1 million. There's been a lot of trouble in Eswatini. For example, in 2021, there were protests all over the country, an unrest, really a political unrest.
Our government is not being fair. You get me? Our government is not being fair. It's just a one-man's land.
That began on the 17th of May, after a student at the University of Eswatini was killed, allegedly by the police. And then this protest against police brutality grew and became political in nature. People began calling for the chance to elect their own prime minister, because at the moment the king appoints prime ministers. And many people died as a result, and some are amputees to this day. There has never been any trials for the state officials that committed some of these crimes.
Now, Eswatini announced Monday that it had repatriated one of its deportees to his country of origin, Jamaica, as we've been talking about. But what does Eswatini's government say about the criticism? Have they explained why they entered this agreement?
Well, in a brief statement, on the 16th of July, the government spokesperson, acting government spokesperson Cebelihle, said that the government of Eswatini will only facilitate a transition of these inmates to their countries of origin, and that this is a decision they got into after lengthy discussions. That's about all they said. But they added that they will be helped by the International Organization for Migration, during that process. And that's about all we know. And yesterday, when they released the statement about this Jamaican prisoner, they repeated those words. I read the case of Victoria, the Jamaican that was released yesterday. He was actually released in 2021. His only sin is that he was previously convicted. The fact he found himself in this situation because he has a conviction, despite the fact that he has tried to make amends. He served his time. He went back to school. He earned a master's degree. He tried, to go back and contribute to society in the U.S. But they just needed a candidate to build a story around. And he suffered because of it.
And in a public statement, the acting spokesperson said the government assured the people of the kingdom that the arrival of 5 third country deportees from the U.S., quote, poses no security threats to the nation. And that, quote, the engagements considered every avenue, including rigorous risk assessments and careful consideration for the safety and security of citizens.
Yes.
So this is how the government has been responding. Now, the day after this episode comes out, which is going to be on September 25th, lawyers for these NGOs and the government are going to be in Eswatini's High Court for a hearing. Now,
Yes.
What should we expect, and what will you be looking for?
The Attorney General already called the application frivolous. And on the day of the hearing, the magistrate didn't show up. I am curious to see when the matter is finally heard, to hear the government side of things.
Do you think that this deal could be overturned as a result of this hearing?
I am not confident that that will happen. In many high-profile cases, judges tend to rule in favor of the government. That has been the trend in Eswatini, at least. For example, there are two members of parliament, pro-democracy members of parliament, that were jailed on the 25th of July 2021 during the unrest. They are still in jail. They've been convicted and are still in jail, serving lengthy sentences. It was clear to every observer that they committed no crime, but they are still inside, and the judges, across the courts, including at the appeals level, voted in, with the state. So I am not confident that this case will favor the applicants.